"Get out of here, Mom. This company is mine now." Daniel's voice echoed through the conference room like thunder. "You're old, outdated, incapable of leadership. You're an embarrassment to us all." I felt my face burn with humiliation as 11 pairs of eyes judged me. "Look at her," he continued cruelly, clinging to the past as if it still mattered. One by one they raised their hands against me. Thomas, Margaret, James, they all betrayed me. 9 votes to oust me from the company I built with blood and sweat. I left that destroyed room in tears, unable to believe my son had betrayed me. 20 years ago, Hartford Industries was nothing more than a dream scribbled on paper napkins. I was 28, with a degree in industrial engineering and an idea no one took seriously, revolutionizing the supply chain for small businesses using technology that was still in its infancy. Robert, my newlywed husband, looked at me that night in our cramped Wicker Park apartment and said, "Diana, if you believe in this, I believe in you." Our first office was on West Madison Street, a 4,000-square-foot space that smelled musty and had an air conditioner that only worked when it wanted. 3 employees, myself, Robert, and Marcus, a brilliant programmer who took stock jobs because we couldn't afford decent wages. I remember working until 3 in the morning, my fingers typing proposals while Robert slept on an old couch we found on the sidewalk. The company grew, from 3 employees to 50, from 50 to 200, from 200 to 500. We opened offices in New York, Los Angeles, and Atlanta. Robert was always by my side, handling finances and operations, but he never questioned who the visionary was. "This is your company, Di," he'd say. "I'm just here to make sure your vision becomes reality." Daniel was born 3 years after we founded the company. He grew up running through the office hallways, doodling on whiteboards, sitting on my lap during meetings when the babysitter was absent. He saw my dedication, my hard work. I thought I was teaching him the value of persistence, integrity, and building something bigger than ourselves. Everything was going perfectly until my world turned upside down. Robert had always been healthy. He ran 3 miles every morning along the lake, ate right, and never missed a doctor's appointment. So when he started complaining of chest pains in March, I thought it was just stress. "We're closing the deal with Boeing," I said, massaging his shoulders. "It's just tension, love. It'll pass." But it didn't pass. A week later, he collapsed in his office. I remember the phone ringing, his assistant's shaky voice. "Diana, you need to come to Northwestern Memorial, now." I drove through the streets of Chicago as if in a trance, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. I found Robert on a gurney, pale, hooked up to tubes and machines that beeped incessantly. "Pancreatic cancer," the doctor said, the words falling like stones. "Stage 4, advanced." He gave me 6 months. Robert only had 4. The first few days after his diagnosis were a blur of second opinions, experimental treatments, and desperate hopes. But 3 months before the end, something changed in Robert. He became quiet, introspective, as if carrying a weight he couldn't share with me. He spent hours in his home office, the door closed, talking quietly on the phone. When I asked, he just smiled, that tired smile I'd learned to hate, and said, "I'm just getting things in order, Di." It was on a June afternoon, 3 months before his death, that he called me into our bedroom. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, creating golden patterns on the hardwood floor. Robert sat on the edge of the bed, holding a large cream-colored envelope sealed with red wax. His hands trembled slightly. "Diana," he said, and there was something in his voice, a gravity, an urgency, that made my stomach clench. "I need you to hold this for me." I sat down next to him, confused. "Robert, what is this?" He held my hands, the envelope between us. His eyes, always so full of light and humor, were dark and heavy. "Promise me you'll keep it safe. Your private safe, not the office one. No one can know about it." "You're scaring me." "Well," he said, and for the first time in our 25 years of marriage, I saw real fear on his face. "You should be scared." He placed the envelope in my hands. It was heavy, filled with papers. "Only open it if Daniel cheats on you." You'll know when it's time, Diana. You'll feel it. I looked at him in disbelief. Daniel, our son? Robert, what are you talking about? Just promise. His voice was firm now, almost desperate. Promise you won't open it until you need to. Promise, Di. I promised. What else could I do? The man I loved was dying, and he was asking me to do it with an intensity that cut to my soul. I put the envelope in my safe that night, hidden behind documents and jewelry, and tried not to think about it. I tried asking Robert about the letter a few times over the next few weeks, but whenever I mentioned it, he'd change the subject or pretend to be too tired to talk. When you need it, you'll understand, was all he'd say. Robert died on a September morning. The sun was rising over Lake Michigan, painting the sky pink and orange. I held his hand as he took his last breath, and the last words he whispered were, "Protect what's yours, Diana. Don't let anyone take it from you." At the time, I thought he was talking about the company. Only later did I understand he was talking about everything: my dignity, my legacy, my life. The funeral was a grand production. Over 300 people attended Holy Week. Name cathedral, flowers everywhere, beautiful speeches about the man Robert had been. Daniel delivered the eulogy, his voice breaking at just the right places, the tears sounding real. I held his hand during the funeral, grateful to have my son by my side at that horrible moment. How wrong I was. The weeks after Robert's death were a blur of grief and emptiness. I'd wake at 3 a.m, reaching for his side of the bed, only to find cold sheets. The Evanston apartment felt too big, too quiet. His toothbrush was still in the bathroom. His clothes still smelled of him. I threw myself into work because it was the only thing that made sense. I arrived at the office at 6 a.m. and left at midnight. I approved contracts, led meetings, made decisions, because if I stopped for even a second, the pain would swallow me whole. And the envelope? It remained in the safe, forgotten. Or maybe I just didn't want to think about it. The idea of Daniel betraying me was absurd, impossible. He was my son. He had hugged me at the funeral, had told me we would be okay, that we would move forward together. Robert was sick when he wrote that letter, I tried to convince myself. He was paranoid, confused by the medication. It meant nothing. But deep in my soul, in a dark place I didn't want to look, a small voice whispered, Robert was never wrong, and if he was afraid enough to write that letter, there was a reason. I just wasn't ready to find out what it was. 2 months after we buried Robert, I called a board meeting. It was time to restructure Hartford Industries' leadership, and there was only one obvious choice for vice president: my son. Daniel was 32 years old and everything a mother could dream of. He graduated from Stanford cum laude in business administration, earned an MBA from Wharton at 25, and was fluent in 3 languages. He had Robert's charisma and my determination. When he walked into a room, people paid attention. When he spoke, people listened. He'd worked at Hartford Industries since graduation, starting at the bottom, as I'd always insisted. He'd worked his way through sales, operations, and business development. I knew the company inside and out. I saw how he stayed late reviewing contracts, how he treated employees with respect, how he talked about our legacy with pride shining in his eyes. Daniel Hartford will be our new vice president of operations, I announced that November morning, and the room erupted in applause. I watched my son stand, shake hands, and accept greetings with that perfect smile. My heart swelled with pride. Robert would have been so proud. "Thank you, Mom," Daniel said to me afterward, hugging me tightly in my office. "I won't let you down. I promise we'll make Hartford Industries even bigger. Together. Together." That word sounded like music. In the first few weeks, Daniel was perfect. He arrived before me, left after me. He took on projects that were behind schedule and got them back on track. He impressed clients in meetings. He brought innovative ideas to expand into the Asian market. I saw him becoming the leader I always knew he would be. "You made the right choice," Margaret Chen told me one day over coffee in my office. "Daniel is brilliant. The company is in good hands with you two at the helm." I smiled, beaming. I was building a family legacy. Hartford Industries would be passed down from mother to son and would continue to grow for generations. It was exactly what Robert and I had always wanted. The change was so subtle that I almost didn't notice when it started. It was at a strategy meeting in early December, 3 weeks after Daniel's promotion. We were discussing expansion into the Asian market, my idea, my project, something I'd been working on for 2 years. I presented the figures, an initial investment of $22 million, a projected return in 3 years, and strategic partnerships already being negotiated with distributors in Singapore and Hong Kong. "Mom," Daniel interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "With all due respect, I think those numbers are too optimistic." I looked at him in surprise. We'd reviewed that presentation together the week before. He'd agreed with every comma. "Optimists?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Daniel, we've been through this. We skimmed the surface," he said, and there was something new in his tone, a sharp edge I'd never heard before. "But when I asked the finance department to do a deeper analysis," he slid a folder across the desk, "the numbers don't add up. The risk is too high. The timing is bad. Frankly, it's reckless." I felt the air leave my lungs. Around the table, I saw curious glances. Thomas Brennan, our gray-haired CFO, picked up the folder and began leafing through it. Margaret Chen leaned forward, interested. "Reckless," I repeated, the word bitter in my mouth. "Daniel, I built this company based on decisions others called reckless. Yes, 20 years ago," he said, and now his smile was almost condescending. "But times have changed, Mother. The market has changed. We can't afford to trade based on intuition." The word hung in the air like an insult. Intuition. As if 20 years of experience, of decisions that transformed a startup into a $500 million company, were just lucky guesses. "Maybe we should review this more carefully," Thomas said slowly, adjusting his glasses as he studied Daniel's numbers. "These points about exchange rate volatility are valid." I swallowed my humiliation and agreed to postpone the decision. But when I left that room, my hands were shaking. Daniel caught up with me in the hallway, his face worried, his hand on my arm. "Mom, I hope you didn't take it personally," he said, his voice soft. "I'm just doing my job. You taught me to always question, right? To never accept anything without analysis? I had taught this. So why did it feel so wrong?" "Of course," I replied, forcing a smile. "You're right. We need to be careful." But that was just the first crack. The following week, it was my decision to renew the contract with Midwest Logistics, our transportation partner for 15 years. Daniel questioned the terms in an executive meeting, suggesting we were paying too much out of sentimental loyalty. When I defended the decision, Midwest had always supported us, knew our processes, and was reliable. He sighed impatiently. "Sentimental loyalty," James Sullivan, our independent counsel, repeated afterward, and there was a note of concern in his voice. "Diana, are you okay? Because that kind of emotional thinking—" "It's not emotional," I cut in, my voice louder than I intended. "It's strategic. Long-term partnerships need to make financial sense," Daniel interjected smoothly. "And James is right to be concerned. Mom, since Dad died, you've been under a lot of stress. No one would blame you if—" "No," he said firmly. "Don't do that. Don't make this about Robert. This is about business." But the seed was planted. I saw it in the looks around the table. Diana is overwhelmed. Diana is emotional. Diana isn't thinking clearly. And Daniel? Daniel just looked worried. The loving son, trying to protect his grieving mother from her own bad decisions. After that day, I started paying more attention. And what I saw chilled me to the bone. Daniel arrived early, but not to his office. I saw him through the glass walls, having coffee with Thomas on the 8th floor. Long lunches with Margaret at expensive restaurants on the Gold Coast. After-work drinks with James at Signature. Lounge. Always laughing. Always intense in conversations that would stop abruptly when I passed by. "Just building relationships," Daniel explained when I asked. "You always said getting to know people is half the work, right?" True. But there was something else. Something he couldn't name. It was Karen, my assistant for 12 years, who planted the first real suspicion in my mind. "Diana," she said one afternoon, walking into my office and closing the door gently. Her face was pale, nervous. "I need to tell you something. I don't know if I should, but you've been good to me and— Karen, what's wrong?" She took a deep breath. "Daniel requested access to the corporate files on your computer. He said you authorized it, that he needed to review some old contracts. But something about the way he asked—" She hesitated. "It didn't seem right. So I said I needed to confirm with you first." My blood ran cold. "When was that?" "Yesterday. He wasn't happy when I declined. He said I was being difficult, that I was questioning his authority as VP. I looked at Karen, my mind racing. What files was Daniel looking for? Why didn't he just ask me directly? "You did the right thing," he said finally. "And Karen, don't mention this to anyone else, for now." She nodded in relief and left. I was left alone in my office, looking out at the illuminated Chicago below, trying to make sense of what was happening. That night, I stayed late and reviewed the system's access logs. My heart sank at what I found. Daniel had accessed confidential board files, documents on shareholding structure, executive compensation terms, succession protocols. Why? I decided to confront him the next day, but he beat me to it. He arrived at my office at 7 in the morning, bringing coffee and that smile that used to melt my heart. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, sitting down. "I'm worried about you." "Funny," I replied, my voice dry. "I was thinking the same thing about you." He tilted his head, confused. "What do you mean? Why are you accessing confidential counsel files?" For a second, just a second, I saw something cross his face. Surprise? Anger? But then it was gone, replaced by concern. "Because I'm a vice president now," he said calmly. "I need to understand the entire structure of the company. I thought you'd be happy to see me being proactive." "Proactive," I repeated. "Is that what you call it?" "Mom," he leaned forward, his voice low, intimate. "I know it's been hard since Dad died. I know you're carrying this all alone. But you have to trust me. I'm here to help, not to threaten you." And just like that, he turned the tables. Suddenly, I was the paranoid one, the grieving mother who was seeing betrayal where there was just a dedicated son trying to do his job. "You're right," she finally said, exhausted. "Sorry, I guess I'm still adjusting." "I know," he said, and his smile was pure compassion. "It takes time, but we'll get through this together, okay?" After he left, I sat in my office for a long hour, wondering if I was going crazy. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe I was seeing ghosts where there were none. But then I remembered Robert's words, whispered on his deathbed. "Protect what's yours, Diana. Don't let anyone take it from you." He knew. Somehow he knew. What I discovered in the following weeks confirmed my worst fears. I started really paying attention, not just to what Daniel said, but to what he did. And the patterns emerged, crystal clear. Thomas Brennan was the first. Thomas had been our CFO for 8 years, a solid conservative man who always supported my decisions, even when they were risky. I trusted him implicitly. But in mid-December, I noticed changes. He began questioning my budgets. He began suggesting independent reviews of projects I approved. He began talking about modern governance and accountability. It was on a Friday night that I understood why. I was working late when I heard voices coming from the conference room down the hall. I recognized one of them instantly. Daniel. The other took a second. Thomas. I approached silently. The door was ajar, just a crack. I could have knocked and entered, but something made me stop. Something made me listen. 15% equity, Daniel was saying, plus a $5 million bonus when the transition is complete. And you remain CFO with full autonomy over finances. Silence. Then Thomas. 15%? Daniel? That's generous? I know, but you deserve it. And frankly, I need someone I can trust when I take over. Someone who understands that Hartford Industries needs a new direction. More decisive leadership. And your mother? The pause was long, very long. My mother built something incredible, Daniel finally said, his voice soft. But Thomas, you see what I see. She's stuck in the past, making decisions based on emotion, not data. Since my father died, she hasn't been the same, and the company is suffering because of it. I don't know if the numbers don't lie. I heard papers shuffling. Look here, 3 bad decisions in the last 2 months. Projects approved that shouldn't have been, contracts renewed when we should have negotiated better terms. She's costing the company millions, Thomas, millions. How long until this affects us all? Another silence. I pictured Thomas studying the numbers, greed and doubt battling on his face. The board will never agree to remove her, Thomas said finally. She's the founder, the face of the company. Leave the advice to me, Daniel interrupted. I just need to know I can count on you when the time comes. 1 vote, Thomas. That's all I'm asking. 1 vote to save the company my mother built before she destroys it. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they could hear it through the door. I froze, waiting for Thomas's answer. 15%, Thomas said slowly. In contract, signed before the vote. Sure, Daniel said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I'll have my lawyer prepare the documents on Monday. I backed away from the door on trembling legs, my world collapsing. I ran back to my office, locked the door, and collapsed into my chair. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold a glass of water. Daniel was buying votes. He was building a conspiracy against me, his own mother. But why? Why do this? I had promoted him. I trusted him. I loved him unconditionally. I spent the weekend in a state of shock. I couldn't eat. I could barely sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling in my bedroom, hearing Daniel's words echoing, "Before she destroys you." I wasn't destroying anything. I was doing what I'd always done, building, taking risks, leading. The decisions he called bad were long-term investments, strategies that would take time to pay off. Daniel knew this, or should have known. Unless it was never about bad decisions, unless it was always about power. On Monday, I forced myself to act normally. I smiled at Daniel in the elevator. I attended meetings. I approved reports. But every second was torture, knowing what he was doing in the shadows. And so I began my own investigation. I discovered Margaret Chen on Tuesday. Margaret had been my COO for 6 years. A brilliant Taiwanese-American woman, she transformed our logistics processes and saved millions. I trusted her like few others. That's why it hurt so much when I saw the email. Karen had given me access to the backup server, just in case you need it, she said with a meaningful look. I spent hours sifting through communications, feeling dirty but desperate. And then I found it. From Daniel Hartford to Margaret Chen, subject, confidential proposal. Margaret, as we discussed yesterday, I'm preparing a leadership restructuring at Hartford Industries. My mother built something extraordinary, but it's time for a new generation to take over. You've been instrumental in the company's operational success, and I'd like to offer you the COO position with a 12% equity stake when I take over as CEO. Plus, a $3 million transition bonus and complete autonomy over all global operations. You deserve it, Margaret, and the company needs leaders like you, forward-looking, not stuck in the past. Can we discuss the details on Thursday? Drinks at Signature Lounge, 7 p.m.? Daniel Margaret's reply came 2 days later. Daniel, your offer is substantial. I need time to consider it. Diana has been good to me, and that's not easy. But I recognize your concerns about the company's direction. Let's talk on Thursday. Margaret. They talked. I didn't need any further proof to know what her response was. I'd seen Margaret and Daniel leaving together Thursday night, laughing, his arm around her shoulders in a way that seemed far beyond professional. 12% to Margaret, 15% to Thomas. Daniel was handing out pieces of my company as if they were his to give. But the worst betrayal was yet to come. James Sullivan. James had been our independent director for 10 years. A respected industry veteran, the former CEO of a logistics company that sold for $400 million. He didn't need money. He didn't need equity. He was on the Hartford Industries board because he believed in our mission, because he believed in me. Or so I thought. I found the memo on Wednesday, buried in a shared folder that Daniel probably didn't think I had access to. Leadership Restructuring Proposal, prepared by Daniel Hartford, for discussion with the board of directors. I read every word, my nausea growing with each line. Daniel wasn't just offering financial bribes. He was building a case against me, pages and pages of evidence of my alleged incompetence. Every action I took, every word I said, was being distorted, turned into evidence of my inadequacy. And then the final section tore me apart. I read the last section where Daniel outlined his proposal for each board member. In total, Daniel was distributing 45% of the company. My company, built with my hands, my sweat, my tears. And James? James, who I thought was incorruptible? There was a scanned handwritten note at the end. Daniel, your analysis is sound. The transition is necessary. You can count on my vote. J.S. I closed my laptop and looked out the window at Chicago stretching out below, the city lights twinkling in the darkness. 20 years. 20 years of sacrifice, of building, of proving I deserved to be here. And in 3 months, my own son had dismantled it all. No, not unmasked. He was stealing. I thought of Robert, of his final words, of how he somehow knew that this would happen. The envelope was waiting for me in my home safe. Sealed for 3 months, its dark promises still intact. Only open up if Daniel cheats on you. You'll know when it's time, Diana. You'll feel it. I was feeling. God, how I was feeling. But I still hadn't opened the envelope. Part of me, the stupid, hopeful, maternal part, still wanted to believe there was another explanation. That Daniel was still my son. That this was a terrible misunderstanding. That illusion was completely shattered on Friday. I arrived 15 minutes before 9, as I always did. The mahogany desk Robert had chosen reflected the morning light. I organized my documents, quarterly reports, growth projections, market analyses, solid numbers. Hartford Industries had had its best quarter in 3 years. The council members arrived. Thomas first, avoiding my gaze. Margaret soon followed, her greeting cool. James entered, talking on the phone, waving absently. Patricia Gonzalez gave me a tight smile. One of the 2 votes Daniel hadn't secured yet, I hoped. Daniel was the last to enter. Impeccable in his charcoal gray suit, leather briefcase in hand, that confident smile that used to fill me with pride. Now it made me feel nauseous. Good morning, everyone, I began once everyone was settled. We have a lot to cover today. The 4th quarter numbers are exceptional. Mom, Daniel interrupted me, his voice calm but firm. Before we get into the numbers, there's something more urgent we need to discuss. My heart raced. Daniel, there's an agenda. The agenda can wait. He looked around the table. We need to talk about leadership. The silence that fell over the room was dense, suffocating. Leadership, I repeated, my voice coming out weaker than I intended. It's okay. We can discuss this later. No, we can't. Daniel stood up, walking slowly around the table. All eyes followed him. Because the issue of leadership is the most important issue facing this company. More important than quarterly numbers. More important than any contract or project. He stopped behind his chair, hands resting on the back, and looked directly at me. Hartford Industries is at a crossroads, he said. We can continue to operate as we always have, based on intuition, on past relationships, on a worldview that made sense 20 years ago, but that now keeps us stagnant. Or we can evolve. Evolve, I echoed. Daniel, our numbers, they're adequate, he cut me off. Adequate, not exceptional, not innovative, adequate. And adequate isn't enough when our competitors are advancing, when the market is changing, when technology is transforming the entire logistics industry. Thomas cleared his throat. Daniel has a point, Diana. The Asian expansion you proposed. It was rejected without proper analysis, I replied, my voice hardening. based on manipulated numbers. Manipulated? Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mom, the numbers were from our own finance team. The only manipulation here is your refusal to accept that maybe, just maybe, you don't have all the answers. I never said I had all the answers. But you act as if you do. He began circling the table again, a predator circling his prey. When I question a decision, you get offended. When I ask for deeper analysis, you accuse me of not trusting you. When board members express concerns, you dismiss them as if they don't understand your vision. That's not true, I protested, looking around the table. You know that's not true. I've always heard everyone. Hearing isn't the same as listening, Margaret said softly. Diana, you asked me my opinion on the Midwest renewal logistics. I gave my analysis showing that we could save $2 million with another supplier. You renewed the contract anyway. Because long-term relationships have value that doesn't show up in spreadsheets. Sentimental value, Thomas interrupted. That's exactly the problem. You're running a $500 million company based on feelings. I felt my face heat up. It's not sentiment, it's strategy. It's feeling, Daniel said, and now there was a sharp edge to his voice. Like everything since Dad died. Every decision tinged by grief, by fear of change, by a desperate need to keep everything exactly as it was when he was alive. The blow was physical. I saw the faces around the table. No one protested. No one defended me. How dare you? I began, but my voice broke. I dare because someone has to tell the truth, Daniel said, now standing at the head of the table, opposite me, as if he'd already taken my place. Dad knew. He knew you'd struggle to go on without him. That's why he prepared me, gave me all the tools, all the training. That's why he told me, weeks before he died, Daniel, you need to take care of your mother. Protect her, even from yourself, if necessary. Lies, every word a lie, but spoken with such conviction that I saw doubt on the faces around me. Robert never said that, I whispered. No? Daniel tilted his head. Then why did he spend his last months grooming me to take over? Why all those private conversations about the company's future? Why did he make me promise not to let you destroy what you two built together? Tears burned my eyes. You're lying. I'm telling you the truth you don't want to hear. He took a deep breath. Mom, you've built something incredible. You're a legend. But legends belong in the past. And Hartford Industries needs a future. And you think that's you? My voice came out as a growl. You, who've been at the company for 5 years? Who's never faced a real crisis, never made impossible decisions, never had to choose between saving jobs or saving the company? No, he said calmly. I don't think so. I know. Because unlike you, I'm not stuck in the past. I see what's coming. And I know exactly how to position this company for the next 20 years. He paused, looked around the table. I am therefore formally proposing to the board that Diana Hartford be removed as CEO of Hartford Industries, effective immediately. The world stopped. What? I managed to say, even though I knew. Of course I knew. You heard. Daniel pulled a document from his briefcase. I've prepared a comprehensive proposal. Diana Hartford retains all her shares, retains an honorary title as founder, but no longer has operational authority. I take over as CEO. Thomas continues as CFO. Margaret is promoted to COO. James remains as senior advisor. You can't do this, I said, but my voice was weak. I can, and I will. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something cruel in his eyes, something I'd never seen in my son. Because someone has to have the courage to do what's right, even when it hurts. Daniel, please. My voice broke. I'm your mother, and I am the future of this company. He leaned across the table, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper that only I could fully hear. You had your chance, Mom. 20 years. It was a good run, but it's over. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear, he continued, Get out of here, Mommy. This company is mine now. His voice echoed through the room like a gunshot. I saw shocked, embarrassed faces. But no one rose to my defense. "You're old," he continued, each word a dagger. "Out of date, unable to lead, an embarrassment to us all. Look at her," he gestured toward me, clinging to the past as if it still matters. My face burned. I could feel 11 pairs of eyes judging me, weighing me down, finding me inadequate. "This meeting is out of order," I tried to say. "The meeting is in perfect order," James said, his voice firm. "A motion has been introduced. We need to vote." "Vote?" I looked at James in disbelief. "No discussion? No due process? This is an ambush." "It's a necessary intervention," Thomas said. "Diana, everyone here respects you, but Daniel is right. It's time for a change." "So you're going to kick me out?" My voice rose. "From the company I built? You're going to believe him instead of me?" "It's not a matter of belief," Margaret said, and there was pity in her eyes. Pity, as if I were a poor thing. "It's a matter of doing what's best for the company, for all the employees who depend on us, for the shareholders." "I am the largest shareholder," I shouted now, my composure shattering. "This is my company. You can't—" "We can," Daniel said simply. "With a simple majority of the council, which, Mom, I already have." "Let's vote," James announced, as if he were conducting just another regular meeting. "Everyone in favor of removing Diana Hartford as CEO of Hartford Industries?" The silence before the first hand went up lasted an eternity and a second. Thomas was the first. His hand rose slowly, his face turned to the table. 15 years of working together, 15 years of trust, 15% equity. "Thomas," I whispered, "please." He didn't look at me. Margaret was second. Her hand rose faster, firmer, without hesitation. 12% and a promotion. James came next. He at least had the decency to look me in the eye as he raised his hand, a cold smile curving his lips. 10%. Robert's best friend. Then the hands multiplied. Richard Park, technology advisor. I'd never had much contact with him, but I assumed his loyalty would be to the company, not to Daniel. Sarah Williams, minority investor representative. Michael Torres, international operations specialist. Everyone raised their hands as if they were simply approving a routine financial report. 6, 7, 8. Each hand was a betrayal. Each hand a piece of my life being ripped away. 9 votes in favor, James announced. Against? Patricia Gonzalez raised her hand, her face tense. "This is wrong. Diana deserves better than this." "I agree," said David Chen, our legal counsel. His hand also rose against it. "This process is irregular at best, illegal at worst. Diana is entitled to—" "The motion passes," James interrupted. 9 in favor, 2 against. Diana Hartford is officially removed as CEO of Hartford Industries. The world didn't fall apart all at once. It was slower than that, more cruel. I felt it first in my chest, a tightness as if someone were twisting my heart in their hands. Then my hands began to shake uncontrollably. I tried to hold them under the table, but my whole body was shaking now. The room began to spin. The faces around the table blurred. Lake Michigan outside seemed to be tilting, the water about to spill out the window and drown me. "Diana?" Margaret's voice came from far away. "Are you okay?" Was it okay? Was it okay? I had built this company with my own hands. I worked until I bled. I sacrificed years of my life, time with my son, nights of sleep, my health. I nearly lost everything in the 2008 financial crisis, and I refused to give up. I turned a dream scribbled on napkins into a $500 million company, and they just kicked me out in 15 minutes. I tried to speak, but my voice wouldn't come out. My throat was closed, too tight. "Maybe she needs a moment," Thomas suggested, still not looking at me. "No," Daniel said firmly. "We need to work out the details now. A clean transition is essential." A clean transition. As if they were switching paper suppliers, not stealing someone's life. "You keep your shares," Daniel continued, looking at me as if he were doing me a favor. 42% of the company. Nothing changes there. And you'll be founder emeritus with an office at... No. The word came out as a growl. Everyone stopped looking at me. No, I repeated, finding my voice. I will not accept a title of consolation. I will not pretend this was anything other than a robbery. Mom? Daniel began. Don't call me mother, I screamed, standing up so abruptly that my chair fell back with a crash. You lost that right when you stabbed me in the back, when you bought these people like merchandise, when you turned my own counsel against me. No one was bought, James said, his voice hard. This was a decision based. A 15% stake? I turned to Thomas. $5 million in bonuses? No, wait. James got 10%, didn't he? And Margaret? 12? How much did my removal cost, Daniel? How much of my company did you give away to buy these betrayals? The faces around the table turned pale. You have no proof, Thomas began. I have all the proof. I grabbed my phone, my hands still shaking, but my voice steady now. I have the emails, the memos, the proposals, every dirty promise my son made to convince you to stab me in the back. Daniel didn't seem concerned. And what do you intend to do with that? Sue the council? Sue your own son? He tilted his head. Everyone would see exactly what I've been saying. A bitter woman, unable to accept that her time is up. My time is up? I laughed, but it came out as a sob. I was 28 when I founded this company. You're what? 32? And you're already so desperate for power that you betrayed your own mother? I didn't cheat, he said calmly. I saved the company from its inability to adapt. There's a difference. I looked at him, really looked, and I no longer saw my son. I saw a stranger. A cold, calculating stranger who used words like adaptation and evolution to mask what he really was, pure, cruel ambition. You're just like him, I whispered. Daniel frowned. Like who? But I didn't answer, because suddenly everything made sense. Robert's urgency, the envelope, the words I couldn't understand. Protect what's yours, Diana. Don't let anyone take it from you. He knew. Robert knew exactly who Daniel was, and he tried to warn me. This meeting is over, I announced, picking up my documents with trembling hands. Diana, there are still details, James began. It's over, I screamed. You stole my company. You're not going to steal my dignity, too. I walked toward the door, each step an agony. I could feel their eyes on my back. Some were embarrassed, others were relieved. Daniel was simply satisfied. At the door, I paused. I turned to look around the room one last time. The mahogany table, the view of the lake, the faces of people I trusted. You'll regret it, I said, my voice low but firm. All of you. Threats now? Daniel laughed. This just proves we made the right decision. I didn't answer. I just left, closing the door behind me with a soft click that sounded like the end of the world. Karen stood in the hallway, her face pale. Diana, I heard... No, I snapped, pushing past her. I couldn't speak. Not now. If I did, I'd fall apart right there. I made it to the elevator. I pressed the button. I maintained my composure as I descended 15 floors. It wasn't until I reached the underground parking garage, the safety of my car, that I completely broke down. Sobs tore from my chest. Tears burned my eyes, streaming down my face. My entire body shook with the force of the tears. 20 years of work, of sacrifice, of love, all stolen in one morning. I don't know how long I stood there, crying in the darkness of the parking lot. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. But when the tears finally stopped, when I could breathe again, a crystal clear thought emerged from the pain. Robert left me a path, an envelope sealed with red wax, a promise of protection. It was time to find out what my husband knew. I hurried out of the parking lot and went straight home. When I got there, I ran to my safe. The envelope was heavier than I remembered. I sat on the floor of my home office, my back against the cool wall, and simply held it for a long moment. The red wax was intact, the seal Robert had pressed with his own hands 3 months before he died. My hands were shaking as I broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter, Robert's handwriting, the handwriting I knew as well as my own, and a smaller, thicker envelope marked Open Second. I unfolded the letter. The date at the top cut me open, June 15th, 3 months before his death. 2 weeks before that afternoon, he handed me the envelope. My Diana. If you're reading this, then my worst fears have been confirmed. Daniel cheated on you. And love, I'm so sorry. So sorry. Because I know this betrayal hurts in a way no other could. I need you to be strong now. Stronger than you've ever been. Because what I'm about to reveal to you will destroy the image you have of our son. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I have to be the one to do this, even after I'm dead. I paused, wiping away the tears that were already beginning to blur my vision. I took a deep breath and continued. I discovered it in March. I was reviewing some financial files. You know how I am with numbers, I can never completely switch off. And I found discrepancies. Small ones at first. Transfers that didn't make sense. Contracts with slightly different values in the official records versus the internal files. I thought it was a mistake, an accounting issue. So I started digging deeper. Diana, Daniel has been embezzling money from the company for at least 2 years, maybe more. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands under shell company names. Millions of dollars, love. Millions. My breath caught. I read the sentence again, certain I'd misunderstood. But the words hadn't changed. I hired private investigators, the best I could find. I paid them out of my own pocket, using accounts you didn't know about, because I couldn't risk Daniel finding out. And what they found. God, Diana, what they found was worse than I imagined. It's not just embezzlement, it's a complete operation. Daniel has fraudulent contracts with non-existent suppliers. He's paying bribes to secure contracts. There are recordings, Diana, recordings of him offering money to purchasing managers at major companies. He's laundering money through Hartford Industries, using our company, the company you built, as his personal tool for illicit enrichment. Investigators estimate he embezzled about $7 million over the past 2 years, perhaps more that they haven't been able to track yet. My hand covered my mouth. $8 million. My son was stealing from me. When I found out, I almost told you right away. But then I got the diagnosis. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And Diana, I was a coward. I couldn't put this on you as I was dying. I couldn't make you choose between suing our son and caring for your husband in the last months of his life. So I decided to protect you the only way I could. I've gathered everything. Every bank statement, every suspicious transfer, every compromising email. The investigators did a brilliant job. There are even recordings of phone calls between Daniel and his accomplices discussing the schemes. It's all in the second envelope. Enough evidence to completely destroy him. But there's more, love. Something I did to protect you. Remember those lawyer meetings I had in July? I said I was organizing the estate, getting things in order. I wasn't lying, but I wasn't telling the whole truth. There's a secret will, Diana. It's notarized, completely legal, and unquestionable in court. And in it, I transferred 51% of Hartford Industries shares to you. I stopped breathing. The shares everyone thinks are in Daniel's name? They're not. Technically, they were in a family trust that I controlled. And I, as the trustee of that trust, transferred the majority of them to you in my will. It's all legal. I consulted 3 different lawyers to be sure. Daniel doesn't know. No one knows except the lawyers involved, and they are bound by professional secrecy. The will was read in private, with only the public provisions announced. The share transfer will be effective the moment you present the document to the board. You have control, Diana. You always have. I just made sure no one could take that away from you. My vision was completely blurred with tears now. Robert, my Robert, even in death, even in pain, he was protecting me. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you tell me? Why hide this? Because I know you, love. I know your heart. If I'd told you about Daniel while he was alive, you would have confronted him immediately. You would have tried to fix him, believing there was still good in our son. But Diana, listen to me. There's no good left in him, not the kind you'd recognize. Whatever we created, whatever he was, has been corrupted by greed and ambition. Investigators have found evidence that he's been plotting to remove you for at least a year. Conversations with board members, strategies to undermine your authority, all calculated, cold, and remorseless. Our son has become a monster, and I'm so sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I know part of it is my fault. Maybe we spoiled him too much. Maybe we didn't set enough boundaries. Maybe we expected too much of him. I don't know anymore. But I know this. You don't deserve to be destroyed by him. You don't deserve to lose everything you've built because our son decided he wants the kingdom for himself. So use what I've left you. The evidence will destroy Daniel legally and professionally. The will restore his control over the company. And Diana, don't hesitate. Don't spare him. He won't spare you. He already proved that by betraying you. You are the strongest person I know, stronger than I've ever been. You will survive this, more than survive. You will overcome. I love you. I always have. From the first day I saw you in that classroom at Northwestern, I knew you were special, that you would change the world. Don't let our son take that away from you. Protect what's yours. Forever yours, Robert. I dropped the letter, sobs racking my body. Robert knew. He knew everything. And instead of burdening me as he died, he silently crafted the tools of my protection. After several long minutes, I managed to compose myself enough to open the second envelope. Inside was a USB flash drive, multiple folded documents, and a handwritten note. All digital files are on the USB drive. Backups were sent to 3 different attorneys, contact information included. The will is registered with the Cook County Clerk's Office, docket number 847392. It cannot be contested. I turned on my laptop with shaking hands and inserted the USB. Folders. Dozens of folders, all meticulously organized. Financial mistrains, bribery, recordings, money laundering, compromising emails, fraudulent, contracts, conspiracy, counsel, secret. Well, I clicked on the first one. Bank statements appeared on the screen. An account in the Cayman Islands under the name Hartford Consulting Ltd., a company that didn't officially exist in any Hartford Industries corporate records. But there were the transfers, small at first, just a few thousand, then tens of thousands, then hundreds. The last transfer, dated 2 weeks ago, $1, $2 million. I opened the recordings folder. There were dozens of audio files. I clicked on one at random. Daniel's voice, crystal clear. I need you to approve the contract with Midwest. $200,000 in your Bahamas account within 48 hours. Make it sound legitimate. Cite operational needs or something. Another voice, which I vaguely recognized as a purchasing manager from one of our largest clients. What if someone questions it? Your mother is meticulous with contracts. My mother won't be here much longer. I just need you to keep things running until I take over completely. Then we can structure much more. Profitable arrangements for both of us. I stopped recording, feeling physically sick. Email folder. Hundreds of them. Exchanges between Daniel and board members dating back months, long before Robert's death. An email to Thomas Brennan, dated May. Thomas, it's clear my mother is losing her touch. Ever since my father became ill, her decisions have been erratic. When he dies, and the doctors say it's only a matter of months, she will completely fall apart. We need to be ready to act. Will you with me? Another for Margaret Chen, June. The transition needs to be clean, quick. No time for her to linger. Once Dad dies, we wait a proper mourning period, maybe 2-3 months, and then make our move. With the right offers to the board, we can easily have a majority. He was planning this while Robert lay dying. While I cared for my dying husband, my son was orchestrating my destruction. The final folder, Testamento Secreto. I opened the document. Pages and pages of legalese, but the crucial part was highlighted. I, Robert James Hartford, being of sound mind, do hereby transfer all assets contained in the Hartford Family Trust, including but not limited to 51% of the common stock of Hartford Industries, Inc., to my wife Diana Marie Hartford, free and clear, to be her sole ownership and control. Dated July 18th, signed by Robert, witnessed by 2 attorneys, officially recorded. I owned 51% of the company. I had majority control, and Daniel had no idea. I sat there on the floor of my office, surrounded by evidence of my son's betrayal, tears drying on my face, and something shifted inside me. The pain was still there. The betrayal still cut deep. But beneath it, growing like an ember into a flame, was something else. Anger. Pure, cold, crystalline anger. My son didn't just betray me. He stole from me. He stole from the company. He was corrupt. He lied, he manipulated. And he planned it all while his father was dying, counting on my grief to weaken me. Robert was right. There was no more goodness there. There was nothing left to save. I glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. The council meeting had been 14 hours ago. 14 hours in which Daniel had probably been celebrating his victory, believing he'd won. He had no idea what was coming. I called the first number on the list of lawyers Robert had left. A man answered on the 3rd ring, his voice sleepy. "Hello? Marcus Whitmore?" I asked, my voice steady now. No tears, no weakness. "Yes? Who is it?" "Diana Hartford. Robert left his name to me. I need you in my office tomorrow at 8 a.m. Bring the entire will, all the evidence, and prepare to go to war." There was a pause. Then, "Finally you read the envelope." "Yes. About the time," he said, and I could hear a smile in his voice. "Robert said you'd wait until the last possible second, that you'd still be hoping Daniel had goodness in him. No more." "Well," Marcus said, and now there was satisfaction in his tone. "Tomorrow morning. And Mrs. Hartford, your husband has prepared everything, absolutely everything. When we're finished, your son will wish he had never been born." "Well," I replied, echoing his words, "that's exactly the plan." I hung up and looked at the mess of papers around me. Evidence of crimes, evidence of treason, and evidence that I, not Daniel, controlled Hartford Industries. My son thought he had won. He had no idea the game was just beginning, and this time I held all the cards. I didn't sleep. I organized. By 6 a.m., my office already resembled a war room, labeled folders, printed timelines, certified copies of the will and its appendices, an evidence preservation order signed by a judge on duty, thanks to Marcus Whitmore, and the controlling shareholders' resolution, in writing, replacing the board's composition. Karen made strong coffee and looked at me as if recognizing an inevitable return. "Get the conference room ready," I ordered, "and call executive security. I want 2 agents at the door, quietly, but present." At 8:59 a.m., I crossed the corridor I'd been seen walking for 20 years. I wore a simple black suit and carried only a leather briefcase. Beside me was the lead attorney, Helena Rowe, petite, unassuming, with unblinking eyes. In her hands was a manila envelope bearing the court's crest. Daniel sat in my chair, his charcoal gray suit, his tie perfect, the practiced smile of someone who believes he's conquered life. Thomas to his left, Margaret to his right, James in the background, the others lined up like a tuned chorus. When they saw me, the whisper broke the surface of their confidence. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Daniel asked, without even getting up. I placed the folder on the table. I sat, not at the side, but at the head. Helena stood behind my left shoulder. Karen behind my right, with a tape recorder in sight. "Extraordinary minutes," I announced clearly. "Meeting called by the controlling shareholder of Hartford Industries. It will be recorded in the minutes that everyone has been duly notified." Muffled laughter. James crossed his arms. "Diana, with all due respect, the advice—" "The board you think exists," I interrupted, "expired at 7:42 a.m. when this majority shareholder resolution was filed." I slid the central document. Stamp, signatures, notarization, date, time. As of this minute, you gentlemen are no longer members of the board. Silence. A heavy silence preceding the fall. Daniel leaned forward. That's ridiculous. You don't have a majority to... I opened the envelope containing the secret will. I placed the authenticated copy with the clause highlighted on the table. I made a point of reading it word for word, breathing steadily. I, Robert James Hartford, transfer to my wife, Diana Marie Hartford, 51% of the common stock of Hartford Industries, free and clear for her sole control. I looked up. My name is Diana Hartford, and Hartford Industries has always been mine. I saw the color drain from Thomas's face. Margaret put her hand to her mouth. James adjusted his glasses twice, as if focusing could change reality. Forgery, Daniel tried, his voice a semitone higher than normal. That's not... Helena put down a second document, an official Cook County seal. Judicial validation, protocol, Dover 847392, 3 witnesses, 2 lawyers, notarized. If you contest the court, not me, she said, soft as ice. I took a breath. Then I opened the next tab. Conspiracy, advice. One by one, I removed the papers and slid them across the mahogany top. Emails, memos, the spreadsheet of offers for participation. I read the exact passages aloud. Thomas Brennan, 15% equity, $5 million bonus. Margaret Chen, 12%, $3 million bonus and promotion to COO. James Sullivan, 10% permanent seat. Thomas cleared his throat. You have no context for these emails. I clicked on the tablet. The speaker released Daniel's voice. Clear, irrefutable. I need your vote when I take office. 15% participation and full autonomy. My mother is stuck in the past. I stopped the audio. I changed folders. Bribes recordings. Another voice from him. 200,000 in the Bahamas in 48 hours. Make it look legit. No one breathed. I pointed to the last folder. Financial mistrains. Flows. Accounts in the Cayman Islands. Contracts with phantom suppliers. Transfers. The red arrows were true. This is corporate crime, bribery, private corruption, accounting fraud, money laundering. Here are the 3 notices of complaint. County Attorney's Office, SEC, and State Police. I touched Helena's manila envelope. Already filed. I saw panic first in Margaret's eyes, then James's mask crack. Thomas tried to speak and couldn't. I straightened my spine. On behalf of the controlling company, I hereby declare the termination for cause of the membership of Thomas Brennan, Margaret Chen, James Sullivan, and the other directors who, at the previous meeting, voted under the influence of undue advantage. I have passed the signed resolutions to Karen. Effective now. Daniel slammed his palm on the table. You can't fire the board. It's illegal. I'm the CEO. He smiled sideways, a compassion that didn't hurt. You were vice president. Today, at 7:59 a.m., I signed your dismissal for serious misconduct, along with a ban on access to company facilities and systems. I pointed to the door. Security. The 2 agents entered unhurriedly. There was no spectacle, just execution. Daniel stood up, chest puffed out. Touch me and I'll sue you. Helena raised her hand with a short piece of paper. Temporary restraining order. Approaching any Hartford employee, supplier, or document in the next 72 hours violates the court order. Do you understand, Mr. Hartford? The word judicial deflated the theater. Diana, please, Thomas whispered, finally looking at me. I made a mistake. You've signed a price on your own conscience, Thomas. I turned to Margaret. You too. Her tears came without resistance. I owed you. I knew. He knew, I confirmed, and he chose anyway. James didn't even try to apologize. He just put the expensive pen back in his pocket and lowered his eyes, as if mentally counting his losses. Follow the agents, please, Karen said firmly. I watched the 10 leave one by one. There was no shouting, no shoving, no scene, just the exact weight of the consequences. When the door closed, the room breathed differently. Lake Michigan, behind the glass, was smooth as a blade. I felt Karen's hand touch my shoulder, the silent support of someone who had been there when no one else had. File everything, I told Helena. The forensic audit starts today. Freeze access. Notify clients and employees, continuity guaranteed, and call the new board members according to the resolution. I want a seat for Patricia, another for David, and 2 truly independent members. The names are in the governance folder. Yes, Mrs. Hartford. I took the minutes and signed them. I signed the letter to the employees. I signed the letter to the customers. I finally signed back my own story. I walked to the window. Chicago stretched out like a map of possibilities. I placed my palm against the cool glass and closed my eyes for a second. Thank you, Robert, I whispered. You saved me again. I opened my eyes. I turned back to the table. There was still much to do: repair contracts, rebuild trust, protect the culture that had almost been stolen from us. But the house was finally in order. My company was clean again. I spent months without saying my son's name. I let the law speak for me. Daniel was indicted for fraud, private corruption, money laundering, and conspiracy. At first, he played the victim. After the audio recordings and transfers in the Cayman Islands were shown in court, he struck a deal: full restitution, loss of political rights in companies for 10 years, and a 9-year sentence, initially in a closed prison. He is serving his sentence. The first installment of the restitution was deposited into the court account a week after the conviction. I didn't attend the final hearing. I only sent a letter. I protected what was mine. You chose what was yours. Thomas Brennan tried to maintain his innocence until the last minute. He ended up cooperating with the prosecution to mitigate his damages. He lost his CFO license indefinitely, paid a heavy fine, and signed an 8-year ineligibility agreement to hold management positions. He sold his suburban home to pay off part of the fine. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He asked for silence. I granted him silence. Margaret Chen cried as she testified. She confessed, returned what she received, and accepted a 3-year suspension plus community service. I didn't hire her back, but I did recommend she complete the master's degree she abandoned halfway through. Let her start over the right way. Not for me, for her. James Sullivan fell on his feet, as men who believe they never fall do. He received the largest civil fine of any board member, was banned from regulated boards, and saw his name disappear from the business columns. He sent me a short note. I underestimated you. I didn't reply. He didn't underestimate me. He underestimated his own conscience. The promised shares were canceled. The phantom contracts were terminated. The repaid money financed an internal integrity fund and a leadership development program named after Robert. The board is now half female, with 2 true independents who don't owe me favors. They owe me truths. And me? I followed suit. I went back to walking early along the lakeshore, like Robert did. I learned to say no without explaining why. I learned that intuition is a calculation the heart makes faster than Excel, and today it's shielded by governance. I visited Daniel once. No lawyers, no bars between us. Just a metal table and a clock too tall on the wall. He tried to smile. He told me about the courses, the regrets, the time that won't come back. I listened. When he called me Mom, I replied, I'm your mother. That doesn't change. What changes is what you do with that fact when you leave here. I left an old photo of him as a small child sitting on my lap in a cramped office on West Madison. I wrote on the back, work to be someone this child would respect. I left feeling light, not because I forgave. Forgiving and forgetting are different verbs. I left feeling light because I finally understood that protecting what's mine was never just about keeping a company afloat. It was about keeping the woman who built it afloat. Today, when I walk through the conference room, no one needs to stand to prove loyalty. Loyalty is in the minutes, in the numbers, in the glass doors that remain open. I stop at the window, look out at Lake Michigan, and quietly thank them. Thank you, Robert. I did, and I continue to do so. Hartford is clean. I am whole, and the future this time bears my name, by choice and by right.